Hi, Tony.
Hi, Michael. How are you?
I'm figuring it out. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, so hey everyone, welcome to the latest episode of War Stories. I'm glad to see so many people in the chat. Glad to always hang out with my good friend Tony Roberts of Analog Toys. As you know, this show doesn't really do the whole boomer and the nudge chit chat before we get started. We don't sit there and be like, "So, how things going? How's Melinda? How's Gracie? Cool. Did you get those shingles put on the house?" Oh, we don't do any of that. We jump right into the movie. So what I want to tell you guys before we start is that Tony and I, we decided to watch this not at the last minute, but we kind of got derailed from a coincidental movie that we were going to do, just timing and everything happening in the world. And we were like, oh, that movie we chose may need to be changed. So we changed the movie. And I'm always up for a war film, good or bad. And yeah, here we are. And I got thoughts, Tony. I got thoughts. Do you have thoughts? Because I got thoughts.
I've got a lot of thoughts. So yeah, I think it was about a week ago. So it's 2 weeks since the last episode. It was about a week ago. And just so the chat's aware, I flicked Michael a message. I said, look, I don't think the movie that we had slated is probably a good time to discuss that.
It was a total coincidence too. It wasn't like it's just a coincidence. Yeah.
So I said to Michael, "Are you ready for a curveball? Have you seen The Hurt Locker?" And you hadn't seen it, but actually, I remember that first message you said to me. I hadn't seen it, but I've heard a lot of good things about it.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, "Oh, this should be interesting."
Yeah, I heard good things when it came out from people in my corporate workspaces who would go see everything. So they would come back and be like, "Oh my God, Slumdog Millionaire is like the best movie ever. Oh my God, The Notebook is the best movie ever. Oh my God, The Hurt Locker is the best movie ever." They were just muggles that would go to. So I've heard a lot of yap about this movie from those types of people, I guess is what I'm saying. So take it for what it is. Anyway, please continue.
Yeah, well, as you said, let's jump straight into it.
Sure.
There will be a quick little bit of chit chat. I would like to personally congratulate you on 95,000 subscribers. Well done.
Well, I thank you. I appreciate that. It's like what was that movie where the guy said something like somebody congratulated them for something and they're like, "Yeah, my hair grows on its own. There's no reason to congratulate." It was something like that where it just. But no, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm still hoping that we get to 100,000 this year, but I've kind of given up on that because it's sort of it's become this treadmill where it's like gain 5, lose 3, gain 6, lose 2. You know, it's this whole thing. But yeah, so everyone's asking. We were going to talk about the movie The Beast, not Enemy at the Gates or Red Dawn. Red Dawn actually is what if history, not so much history. So even though, Melinda, I know we said no chit chat. Watch me break this whole thing wide open. Melinda had an interesting thought the other night. She was asking me about what our parameters were for War Stories as a show. And I said, well, we try to do things that are history based. And she said something about, because she knew that we were rescheduling the movie. And she said, "Oh, what were you going to see? Was it like Rambo 3? And off the cuff, I went, "Well, no, Rambo 3 wouldn't count." And she goes, "Why not?" And I went, "Well, because we talk about historically based things." And she goes, "No, you said you talk about things that are rooted in a historical real world context." And I went, "Oh yeah, Rambo 3 does kind of actually fall into our parameters," which pleased me to no end. Like, great. But anyway, we're still working our way through it, everyone. We're feeling our way through things.
If Rambo 3 doesn't qualify, then technically, like Where Eagles Dare doesn't qualify
and
either.
That's exactly why I said Rambo 3 qualified. That is the exact movie that came up, and I went, "Oh no, then definitely Rambo 3 qualifies."
Rambo 2 doesn't because
right.
Set in 1985, the war in Vietnam was over. That is a genuine kind of
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We do have standards, people. We're just trying to fine tune everything and use fine grit sandpaper, but we're getting there. Here we are. We're talking about The Hurt Locker, which is one Best Picture of the Year. I heard a lot of effusive scuttle about this movie over the years. I never ended up seeing it. Like, so for example, a few years prior, I did see Black Hawk Down. I never saw Jarhead, but I didn't see Hurt Locker. But you know, and like I said, back in college in the late '90s, I saw Three Kings, which different engagement but same battlefield. So yeah, let me just address this before. This is the second time that this person has posted this comment. Jitterbug, I said many shows ago, not just in War Stories, but prior, that Tim and Aaron have both gotten new jobs, and they're both currently trying to refocus on their family lives and also root themselves in these new promotions that they've gotten in their careers. So they're doing real life stuff right now. And I'm the only guy for whom RetroBlasting is 24/7 real life as a career. So right now they're just doing what they need to do for their children, their families, everything else. They're fine. Everything's fine. There's no problem. There's no drama. They're just doing what they need to do. All right. Hurt Locker. Next, you know what? Next show, I'm going to jump in and just be like, hey, Tony, I don't really care how things are going. I hope everybody in the chat's going well. I don't really care. Let's talk about, whatever. All right, go for it. Hurt Locker.
Yeah, well, yeah. So I wanted to write down a few facts and figures for this one before we kind of introduce it. So,
okay,
as you said, it actually won 6 Academy Awards in 2010.
Good Lord.
I believe the movie came out right at the tail end of 2008, and so far at the tail end, it didn't qualify for the 2009 Academy Awards. So, but yes, it won 6 Academy Awards for sound editing, sound mixing, editing, screenplay, directing, and
that's
best
not
picture.
Right.
Made on a budget of $15 million, it grossed about $50 million worldwide. Directed by Catherine Bigelow, starring Hawkeye, Falcon, and some other guy. And written by a complete idiot. No, written by a man named Mark Bowl, who he does have a few other writing credits. His name was really familiar to me for some reason. Mark Bowl. There's some other war film that he's made, but before we get into it, I just want to give you a list here of the other Best Picture nominees for 2010. I don't know if you've looked this up.
I haven't. Go for it.
Okay, so the 2010 Best Picture nominees were Avatar. I hate that film, but it's better than this.
Right.
Up, the animated film.
Right.
Precious, which I think is a wonderful motion picture. The Blind Side with Sandra Bullock. District 9. Up in the Air, which I don't think I've seen. That's like a George Clooney salesman one where he's always flying.
Right.
A Serious Man, An Education, and Inglourious Bastards.
Okay. Wow.
All up, there isn't a standout film there that I feel got, shortchanged. It's not like, Goodfellas not winning.
Or Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah. It wasn't one of those kind of years, but yeah. So to sum this film up, I believe it's set around 2004 in Baghdad, Iraq, during the conflict. Obviously, I spent a lot of time over there, so I wasn't there in 2004. I went a few years later, but it's basically the film is based around a very small EOD unit, which is explosive ordnance disposal, the bomb, the guys who defuse the bombs. It's based around a very, very small unit, like an unrealistically small unit, 3 guys. And basically, the film is just a series of set pieces having to defuse bomb after bomb after. This film, to me, doesn't even have a 3-act structure. It's just, here's one kind of bomb. Here's another kind of bomb. Here's another ridiculous concept for defusing a bomb.
Right.
And that's pretty much the nuts and bolts of it. But the film is advertised, tries to portray itself as it's shot documentary style, and it tries to portray itself as this very realistic depiction of combat, which I think I said to you in a message the other day, if I could sum up the Hurt Locker in one word, I would say irresponsible.
Yes.
I feel its depiction, because of the fact that it's portraying itself as real as it gets, when it's actually completely not that.
Yeah, the writers claims that he was, I don't remember if it was several weeks or several months, but that he was embedded with an IED disposal unit, like a, one of those groups, and how he learned all this stuff and then came back and he wrote this script. And as somebody who, went to film school and then also worked out in Hollywood and read film script after film script and gave coverage and found out what these guys think is marketable, I was watching this movie beat for beat going, okay, this is where they decided they needed an embellishment here. This is where they decided they needed to up the stakes here. This is where they decided they needed a conflict here. This is where, and they just started layering things onto this script that, okay. One of the big problems that not only I had with the 1990 film Memphis Belle, but also the crew of the Memphis Belle had with that movie, was how Hollywood put into that movie how the crew didn't get along. So like in combat, they're yelling at each other, they're screaming at each other during combat, they're putting kick me signs on the back of each other, they're doing all this horrible stuff to one another because drama. And all of that is Hollywood infused. It's because, well, these guys are all business out there in the war zone, whether you're in the air or on the ground, because everybody's dependent on everybody else to stay alive. That's just not interesting to us. We've got to change all this up. And to me, and especially to you, me as a purveyor of history, you as a guy who was actually there, that's got to be so disorienting. That's got to be so confusing. Like it pulls you out of the film so much. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to overtalk it, but I wanted to ask one question related to that before we move on to the plot itself. Do you think that there is a reticence in modern war filmmaking, regardless of the theater of operations? Do you think there is a reticence within scripts? Because we're seeing it all the time. We saw it in Fury. We're seeing it in Hurt Locker. It doesn't matter what war you're talking about. It seems like Hollywood is very reticent to make the opposition in that war the opposition in the film, whoever they were. So they don't want to show Germans as bad guys. They don't want to show Iraqis as bad guys. They don't want to actually show the people who we were in opposition to in the conflict. So instead, they know they need a conflict. And so they just say, let's create inner conflict with the soldiers in the squad. And you're going, but that would mean that they wouldn't survive. Like that's a recipe for death. Am I off base?
No, I think you're 100% correct. And it's so false, because before a unit would deploy to Iraq, they would go through extensive training. And at the end of the day, the military is full of human beings, and not all human beings get along.
Right.
But those things get nutted out in, pre-deployment training phases. Now, I do understand in this film, and we'll talk about it in a moment, but they lose their team leader in the opening scene, and then they're given a new sergeant. He comes into it. But that would still be managed. This conflict, just the guys would, even if you hated each other on a personal level, you would still get on with the job. We're professional soldiers. It's
Wes, thank you for the super chat. He says, Michael and Tony, as always, great to get to spend an afternoon with you guys, and you as well. And Tony, to your point, Charms 1VP says, I was CIED in Afghanistan in 09 and 10, and the EOD techs I worked with weren't big fans of this movie. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about this plot, and I'm going to do my best to make this not a run-on joke in this series, but I'm going to do my best to not say, So then, and so. I'm going to do my best to keep the word so out of this. Again, I will fail, but I'm going to make the attempt. The movie begins with the trio, which is as you said, fatally undermanned IED disposal group. And they are led by Guy Pearce, who's playing an American soldier. He's their commanding officer and bomb expert guy, disposal expert. They have an IED that's underneath, looks like a pile of trash, and they've identified it with a robot, but the robot's wagon to pull the detonating charges loses a wheel. So he has to put on a bomb suit and go out there and carry it over to the site himself. They've pushed everybody back. They've got supporting troops at the perimeter of this area. And then they notice that with their training, they notice that somebody, a butcher across the street, is holding a cell phone, which is an indicator that he could be about to detonate this thing via remote. And so here is as always, guys, I've had to edit some of these clips to avoid the YouTube copyright gods. So just work with us a little bit.
Sanborn, butcher shop, 2 o'clock. Dude has a phone.
Why is Eldridge running?
Make him put it down. Put down the phone. I can't get a shot.
So Guy Pearce essentially gets Steven Seagal'd like an executive decision. He's like and much like what happens to Orlando Bloom in The Outpost, they get a big name star to sort of star in the first bit of the film and get things going. But unfortunately, his character is killed and they have to get a new guy. What did you think of Jeremy Renner's? He plays James. What did you think of James's introduction in this, Tony?
Well, real quick before that.
Sure. Oh yeah, sorry. Sorry.
It's important to remember at the start. Because I was looking forward to this film when it was coming out. Back when it came out in 2008, Jeremy Renner wasn't the star he is today. Guy Pearce was actually a much bigger star. Mm-hmm. And Guy Pearce, they featured a lot of footage from that opening scene in the trailers and movie posters. Mm-hmm. And it was that Hollywood, typical bait and switch where you were almost led to believe that Guy Pearce was the star of the film. And then all of a sudden it becomes Jeremy Renner. Now, when you say, how do I feel about the way he was introduced? I actually don't remember how. He's in his room.
Yep.
Playing music, smoking cigarettes in his room. And they come in and there's a little moment between Anthony Mackie. I'm going to try not to call them Hawkeye and Falcon all the way through, but maybe a little. So Falcon comes in to meet his new team leader, and it's Hawkeye. And the first thing he said, he wants to rip the plywood off the window.
I've got the clip right here.
Okay. This is in the right place, right? Yeah. Well, while you're here, can you help me move this thing? Yeah, no problem.
Maybe you shouldn't take this down. We get a lot of mortars at night.
Yeah, well, it's not going to stop a mortar round from coming in through the roof, Besides, I like the sunshine.
He likes the sunshine, Tony. Likes the sunshine. Yeah. Sure.
So he's true. It won't stop a mortar round from coming in through the roof. So you know what we did in Iraq? We put sandbags on the roof.
Sandbags are a tried and true technology. They've been around for a very long time. Have many versatile uses, whether it's stopping an explosion, mitigating a flood, or rising water. They're very, very useful pieces of kit. Wow. Who'd have thought?
Yeah. So it's just a little character moment that the idiot writer has put in there it's your first little indication that this guy is perhaps a little bit fearless, maybe. Or he has some kind of bravado, or whatever it is, it's the first little moment amongst about 500 more moments in the film that just show this guy's complete disregard for his, not only his own safety, but the reason I say this film is irresponsible is his complete disregard for his fellow soldier.
Yes.
That would not fly. He would get found out. And if he doesn't get killed by one of his own people, which with a guy this, I know that kind of thing happened in Vietnam. I certainly never witnessed anything like that in Iraq, and I didn't hear of anything like it.
Right.
But I never came across a complete idiot like this guy.
Yeah, you can tell the movie's trying to sell us all on the idea from minute one with James, aka Hawkeye, that he is just adrenaline junkie. Like, he's just this guy that's like, yeah, I was in the suck in Afghanistan, and now here I am because, I'm just doing another tour because that's the kind of guy I am. He never says it, but other people are saying it about him. And he does nothing to actually negate that. There's no dramatic twist throughout the movie that reveals that, no, he's really just doing it to feed his family, or he really doesn't like it out here, or it never plays anything but the way they ham-fistedly sell it to you in the script, that he's just this guy that he does things his way, and he's just single-mindedly focused on disarming bombs in high-stress situations, and you never really get a clear underpinning of why. You never, so there's
it all hangs on that quote that they put up on the screen at the very, very start. I wrote it down so I wouldn't misquote it. So, quote appears on the screen: "The rush of battle is often a potent and lethal addiction, for war is a drug." Very pretentious. Not to get too pedantic here, the rush of adrenaline in combat can be addictive. War, it's not the same thing as combat.
Right.
And what they're doing is in a way, isn't exactly combat either.
Right.
But what's really important to note is that was written by a guy called Chris Hedges, a journalist, an author, and a clergyman. So a clergyman, if you're going to say for war is a drug, does he know what drug addiction feels like as a clergyman?
Right.
That opening quote should have come from a veteran and I don't even know, this guy may be a journalist. I don't know that he was ever even embedded over in Iraq. I think this guy is reading books and other articles and watching interviews and making his own assumption. You're
talking about the writer?
Yeah.
Yeah, he says in the special features on the disc, he says claims that he was there for, I think, several weeks or several months with a group of bomb disposal guys.
I'm talking about the guy who wrote this opening quote.
The quote. Yeah.
Yeah, you read his Wikipedia page, you're like, why get a quote from this guy? They're just propping it up right at the start.
We have a question from Keith Holmesley. He says, Tony, why defuse bombs versus blowing them up by shooting them?
Well, first of all, shooting a bomb will very rarely blow it up. You need some kind of explosive type detonation. But that's another frustrating thing in this film, is that often he's trying to defuse bombs that he doesn't need to defuse. Most of the time, EOD techs will place a charge like they were trying to do in that opening scene with the robot until the wagon wheel comes off. You will clear the surrounding area, you'll place a charge, and you'll do a controlled detonation. You don't actually have guys in there trying to, is it the red wire, the green wire? Like it's not realistic.
Right.
The safest way to get rid of a bomb. So yeah, you can't, shooting a bullet at an explosive will not make it detonate. You need a detonation to set off the explosion. So
right.
But yeah, a small charge of C4 and some det cord and a primer and yeah.
By the way, Tony, I I don't want to step on any of the firsthand experience that you have, but I've been thinking about what you were saying about putting sandbags on the roof, and I really got to check you on that because, as we all know, sand is not easy to come by in Iraq, so it's probably not feasible to get enough sandbags to do that. You might have been in a special unit, maybe you had good provisioning.
Yeah,
I'm gonna end this bit there, and we're gonna move on to the next. So anyway, all right. So I will admit to everybody right now, I did put all of the clips in order, and they all are in order. What I did not count on, since I numbered them without any descriptors, was the fact that they all look khaki and dark brown in the thumbnails. So I can't remember exactly what we're about to watch. So this should be
surprise me.
Yeah, this should be one of the clips from the very first engagement where James is out there with his two guys, Falcon and the specialist, the oddly skittish specialist. The third guy in the group is they're trying to sell the idea that he's inexperienced and doesn't know what to do, but he actually feels more like a civilian that's been put in gear and handed a rifle and is literally asking people to tell him what to do every step. Like, it's like he has no soldiering instincts at all, which is strange. Not really sure how they managed to do that. So here is the next bit. And this is definitely the scene where you start to realize James does things his way, and he doesn't prepare his two guys for what he's about to do in any moment.
Blaster 1, what's going on? Blaster 1, what are you doing?
And he just doesn't answer him for several bloated, like half a minute. It's probably less than that in movie terms, but it takes him yelling at James through the headset several times for him to say, yeah, I'm setting up a distraction for anybody that might be watching what we're doing, from the rooftops or whatever. And then he doesn't answer him again forever. That was the moment where it started to break for me, because the thing with him taking the thing off the window was like, okay, they're trying to say he's this guy that's not really worried about death, or whatever. But prior to that, the Guy Pearce character didn't act this way. He was very communicative with his men, and they were all going by the book and
trying to make the right decisions. And
now here's this guy, and he's just doing this stuff, and you're going, oh man. What was your take on that, Tony? Like, your read on him just throwing a smoke grenade they probably didn't even know he had.
So I watched this film probably around 2010. I got it on DVD in Iraq. I've never seen it since, but I've always wanted to talk about it. So I didn't remember all of the movie. And I've got some notes here, and I've just written down smoke grenade WTF. This three-man team, and let me explain that not even the special forces operate in groups that small. It's maybe 4 men on a foot patrol in the jungle. But in Iraq, it would be at least 6 guys and 2 vehicles. If something happens to a vehicle, you need another vehicle for back. Anyway, I won't go into all of that technical stuff. He's walking down the road, and for no reason whatsoever, he throws a smoke grenade. That is the writer and the director trying to fabricate tension or suspense. As you say, he doesn't answer on the radio, and I'm just thinking, you arrogant prick.
And you think that they're just establishing this and then they'll resolve it with a character arc, but it just, throughout the movie, it just keeps getting worse. He never actually learns anything. Not to jump ahead of anything, I wanted to bring up some really great comments here. Enigmatic Penguin says, this movie was an Iraq EOD movie to the same degree that Return of the Jedi was a Vietnam War film. And then let's see. I saw another comment here. Oh, Jeff72. He says, any EOD team, number one, acting like that would be RTU'd. Yeah, exactly. Um, and let's see. And then Matthew says we usually had to hold an area and wait for EOD at least 4 to 5 hours. Yeah. I'm so glad to see some of this firsthand experience coming into the chat. It's so helpful. And also, Kieran, I really like this comment that you left. I'm so glad we didn't have to watch this film to be part of this live stream. You know, that was part of Tony and I's whole philosophy about these streams for War Stories, is that we want people to understand that I'll split it into two groups. There's people that care about spoilers and there's people that don't. Either way, there's no judgment. But I want the word of mouth to get around that if you never have an interest in watching a particular movie that we're going to be talking about, you can still tune into this and get everything you need to follow the discussion. You know, we have the clips, we have the everything so that anybody can enjoy it, meaning the War Stories episode. If you never want to watch, I don't know why you'd never want to watch Band of Brothers. That I won't judge you for it publicly. I might privately, but if you never want to watch, Band of Brothers, you can still enjoy understanding and learning about it through this series. Fair? All right, cool.
All right. I actually think I think it's awesome, Michael, because I know a number of friends and followers of the channel who have actively gone out and purchased Band of Brothers and watched it because of the series that we did. You know, Laser Pants was one of them. He'd never seen it. He's now watched it.
That's great.
Certainly in this case, I can promise you right now that this episode me and Michael are doing will be far more entertaining than this movie.
and you know, I like knowing that people are inspired to go now see things they haven't seen before. I will say that I hope that, because I know that Laser Pants really loves his caps. I don't want Laser Pants to get so into Band of Brothers that he goes out and gets himself an OD green cap and then just puts it on as is, because he's going to look like Fidel Castro. But if he changes his beard, then he can totally start rocking the OD cap just fine. Anyway, all right. So now he's headed down to find out where this IED is. They kind of know where it is based on some intel that some of the other troops who encountered it have given them. And then this random moment happens where they've got the intersection barricaded off. Various troop units and squads with their Humvees are kind of watching everything. And this Iraqi taxi driver just blasts through them into the intersection where James, aka Hawkeye, is walking in his bomb suit, right? Which you just saw from the clip earlier. And he has a standoff with this angry taxi driver where the scene feels like it's loaded to the idea that this taxi driver could be part of this bomb plot and part of the plan of the insurgency. And yet ultimately nothing comes of it except, as we just said earlier, engineered tension. So here is a bit of that moment.
Back.
3-4 rounds fired. The 9 is now pressing into the Hodge's forehead.
And then the guy backs up, and then they pull him out of the car, and they zip tie his wrists and they carry him off. And then James he turns back around, puts his 9mm away, and just keeps walking down the road, you know, headed to the IED. And you're going, what was the point of that? Like, and again, I wasn't there in Iraq. I'm not claiming that I was. So I'm trying to use context clues to determine scenes in these kind of movies. So, Tony, is there any basis in reality for anything in that scene?
Bits of it, but the way it's portrayed is very, very broken. So, you see early on in the film on the back of their Humvee, there's got a big sign written in English and Arabic, says something along the lines of "Caution, stay back 100 meters or you will be shot." In English and Arabic, every military vehicle, private security vehicle in Iraq had those signs.
Right.
But what we didn't realize was like 40% of the Iraqi population is illiterate, so they can't read Arabic or English.
Right.
So you would get Iraqis, and certainly after a few years of the, and this is supposedly 2004, so only, a year after we went into Iraq. But the Iraqi locals would, you would have these signs on the back, they would get close, but there had been so many instances, and I can remember having to sit through some really horrendous footage when I was in the military, kind of educating us on the type of scenarios that were going on in Iraq, where vehicles would drive through checkpoints.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, because it's a car bomb, and once they get to where they want to go, they're going to detonate. Occasionally, you would get just a dumb Iraqi who thought he could get past the checkpoint because he's hurrying home.
Right.
There would not be a standoff. If a local vehicle drove through that checkpoint, every one of those soldiers would have opened fire.
Right.
They are the rules of engagement that they had at that time. That car would have been turned into Swiss cheese.
Yeah.
But it gives... So the riders have kind of taken something that did happen, where local vehicles would run checkpoints, and then turned it into a hero moment for this one guy in the bomb suit to stand out the front and show how big his testicles are.
Right.
And also, like you said, nothing comes of it. The guy doesn't have a bomb. Do you think I think he fires a round into the ground first next to the car before he shoots the windscreen?
Mm-hmm.
By that point, that Iraqi is going to be like, oh, whoops, that was a checkpoint. I should back up here.
Right.
It's just totally, and I think it's all a setup for the line that James says afterwards, where he says to, when Hawkeye says to Falcon on the radio, what was his name? Sanborn. When James says to Sanborn, if he wasn't already an insurgent, he is now.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like, really? And then he walks off, and then he diffuses it. Is this what they call the daisy chained bomb?
Yes, I have. Yeah, I pulled this clip only because we talked a lot prior to this show, because you were curious what my opinion was. Hey, everybody, news. I'd never seen this movie prior to us doing the show, so I was happy to. Happy is a strong word. I was intellectually stimulated to learn about this movie for this show. Put it that way. Happy, not so much. But there is this moment in the film, this visual after he gets past what we just showed you, where, and I've got the clip here, where he finds the IED and he pulls the detonator out of it, and then he sees this red wire running under the sand from that IED. And he's like, wait a second, there's another wire. And he starts tracing the wire. And when he does, this visual occurs that I'm going to show you. It gets that whole thing you and I talked about engineered suspense, where they're engineering artificial suspense. If this was just a fictional movie, I told myself, if this had been a fictional movie with a completely original story and it wasn't set in historical context, this would have been a very effective visual. But because the whole film world is suspect, I don't know if I can accept the verisimilitude of this moment. But here's the moment, just for everybody to see it. So he's found 5 or 6 of these things in the ground. How wise is it to just pull on the main det cord and pull all of them up by their noses?
There's a number of issues going on here. Those 155 shells, they are damn heavy.
Yeah.
He just, with one hand, dragged about half a ton of explosives, like 400 or 500 kilos.
Right.
Det cord will snap or it will pull out of the fuse. But the stupidest thing, and of all the American soldiers in this scene in the perimeter, he's the expert, right?
Right.
He should know about pressure plates, pressure switches, which are kind of the reverse of mines, where they'll put another charge underneath the main bomb, so that if it is tampered with and lifted up, the other explosion goes off.
Boom.
It's so he just to backtrack very quickly, he finds the first shell, and he pulls the blasting cap out of it. He cuts the wires, and he pulls out the blasting cap.
Yep.
He then finds all these others, and there's that shot where he pulls them out, and you're like, whoa, that daisy-chained artillery shells. This is real bad. Then he follows a command wire around where it's like it's wrapped around a screw in the side of a wall where someone can basically plug in the controller to set it off. Now, how far away is that point of the wire to the bottom? It's not that far.
Right.
So whoever runs down with the detonator to hook it up to that wire, they're going to kill themselves in the process because they're right next to the bomb.
Right.
But they build up all this tension. He's got all these other bombs. And then you see another guy, an Iraqi guy, running out of the building. And they have a face-to-face confrontation. And he looks at him and he pulls the blasting cap out of his pocket and he's like, huh. It's like, oh, wait a minute. So that one blasting cap diffused the whole thing. So all that tension when you were pulling the others up, you had already disarmed the bomb. Like every one of those would have had a blasting cap in it. So he only diffused one. The other 6 are technically still alive. It's just...
I seem to recall that there was... I think they tried to imply that he was snipping the detonators out of them in this herky-jerky montage that Catherine Bigelow filmed in. For those of you that don't know, by the way, Catherine Bigelow, who directed this movie, was the director of Point Break. She also directed Zero Dark 30. Your mileage may vary with those particular filmography mentions. But yeah, so you're right. That whole sequence was filmed in a way where the audience just has to take everything at face value. That one, there wouldn't be detonating pressure mines underneath all of those IEDs. 2, that IEDs would be daisy chained. 3, that you could pick up that amount of weight. 4, that it isn't dangerous even without pressure plate mines to drag things by their det cords and just pull them up like that. And then also, like you really astutely pointed out, Tony, that the alleged detonation point was close enough to kill whoever it was that would be setting the thing off. I mean, the whole thing is just, it's Steven Spielberg. Sorry, go ahead.
The way that's arranged with the wire running down, that's what we call detonation by command wire.
Right.
So you'll plug the wires into a small detonator and then literally using a battery charge. The charge will go down the wires. It will set off the detonator. Typically, when I saw that used in Iraq, and I've actually had IEDs target the vehicles I've traveled in. I've nearly been blown up several times. A command wire style detonation. The command wire, it's not normally in a built up area like that. That's normally for out in a desert, where they actually bury the wire off into the desert, like 400 meters. So we would always be on the lookout for, a lone guy on a motorcycle out on a desert track, because they're the kind of guys who are going out to do this, not 5 meters away. Like you may as well just have a guy walk in with a suicide vest. It's much easier to hide. But once they've come across all of this, the immediate thing is like, right, clear the entire area, and then let's just blow this thing up from a safe distance. But no, my brain hurts.
Yeah, there's multiple points in the film, and we'll be showing you clips from some of them where Sanborn is telling him, "Hey, we got the engineers coming in soon. Let's just get out of here. This isn't our job. We don't have to go the distance here. They'll handle what needs to be done." And he's like, "No," or he just stays around. And you'll see clips from that, guys, here in the next few minutes. That was my other issue. It's like, yeah, I know that a lot of IEDs are detonated on site. They're not coddled or handled, or, it's almost like, well, quite literally like what Guy Pearce tried to do in the beginning of the film, where it's like, we're just going to blow this up. And World Made of Cardboard, thank you for the super chat. He says, thank you for the intellectual stimulation. I've had several vets tell me about how out of reality this film is. Your analysis is perfect yet again. Well, I can't speak for my own analysis, but I'm so glad that Tony is here with me to analyze this movie, because that it helps me feel more confident about my blech for this film.
But you see, I knew when I recommended this film to you, Michael, that that you would be a person who would not switch off their brain when they walked
Right.
into the cinema or sat down in
Yeah.
your basement, wherever you watched it. I knew you wouldn't switch off your brain, and I was supremely confident that you would, because what are we, like 15 minutes into the film, and it's been completely broken already, and
yeah,
you've said, like, you know, there were indicators as we went along. When that Iraqi car drives through the checkpoint, and you said that was the moment when it completely broke for me.
Yeah.
We are 15 minutes into the film.
Yeah. Dude, this is a foundation of you know, styrofoam cups. Like, it is not this film script is George Aitken says, question, how did they manage to bury all those shells without anybody noticing? Good point, since it's in the middle of a main thoroughfare. Day or night. I mean, really? Yeah. Killamagwai, thank you for the super sticker. Much appreciated, sir, or madam, or Mogwai.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like you said, in the middle of the street while setting the thing. Yeah. And then Wolfie says, well, they bury them at night. It's like, yeah, but 6?
Look, they let's say that that did happen, you know, because that is what the Iraqis would do. They would bury them at night. But do you think the other locals, because you see a lot of locals, you know, watching from balconies, and there's some kids, the Americans might not have known that they'd buried the bomb there. The locals would know about this.
Right.
And they would not be there.
Right. Yeah.
That is what we call a combat indicator. A massive combat. You hear people talk, particularly in the conflict in Afghanistan, where they're fighting the Taliban. When you go into an area and all of a sudden you don't see any women and kids, it's a massive indicator that something's about to occur. In Afghanistan, there was a lot more actual engagement with small arms and machine gun fire. Iraq was very, very IED heavy.
Yeah.
And this is not how it goes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I'm trying to imagine how that conversation would go, where, you know, the guys show up and they're like, hey, everybody, look, tonight we're going to be burying some of these bombs right by your apartment flat, your flats here. Cause, you know, we want these troops gone. You have 2 options. You and your kids can stick around and watch from your balcony window. It will blow up the building with you, but you're welcome to stay and watch the fireworks. Or you can pack some bags and leave tonight, because we certainly don't want you to get hurt. It's up to you. Yeah, they'd be gone. They'd all be gone. But they're all just sitting there literally in one scene with camcorders, you know, and on balconies, just kind of watching like it's, you know, a football match. And it's just like, huh?
Well, I think that whole camcorder thing comes from in those first few years of the Iraq conflict. I mentioned before, I had to watch some very, very disturbing footage when I was in the military, because they were placing IEDs like this, and then Al Qaeda Iraq, they were trying to capture a lot of this stuff on film so they could put it on the internet, and so that did happen. But these guys weren't like standing in that very first scene where the guy walks out of the butcher shop with the phone, right? And it turns out he is the one detonating it. Did he realize that his phone would work if he stayed inside the butcher shop?
Right. See, thank you. Like, I get that it was, you know, 2007, so it was a little, you know, Nokia or whatever it was, but it still should work without him having to come out into the open. You know, like he was like my dad, where he's like, I can't get my bars. Like, or, you know,
it's the same with the guys with the video cameras. They would be hiding like snipers. They wouldn't be.
Yeah, just standing there. The guy was just standing there in his Ian Malcolm hipster wear. You know, he's just like, you know, Jason Anderson says, what's hilarious is every film about a specific job or place or event never resonates with the people who are actually there doing the thing, except Office Space. Yeah, very true. Very true. Sal, you really shouldn't have done this, man, but I can't thank you enough.
Whoa.
Tried to do a 1 to 1,000 ratio, but 99 was as close as I could get to 95. Congrats, Michael. Onward and upward to 100,000. Love the series, gentlemen. Much love to the two of you. To you as well, Sal. I told you that Bosk was free, but I mean, all right, fine. I know I'm late in delivering it too, so you really shouldn't have done this because I'm late in putting it in the mail. Okay, so I said so. Oh, I was doing so well. I did it again. I was okay. We are now at the point where he comes back from this particular engagement, this particular, not mission, I guess, but incident, whatever you want to call it. And we have this moment.
I talk to you, and you talk to me.
You going on a date, Sanborn?
No, we're going on a mission. And my job is to keep you safe so we can keep going on missions.
And I thought, thank you for somebody saying this line. Because at least I thought at that moment, okay, it's ham-fisted, but maybe it's just ham-fisted character development where this guy's going to learn something at the beginning of this to the end of this, meaning James, Hawkeye. All right. Little did I know that wasn't going to be the case. I thought this was the moment where the film was trying to have some logic, and it was like, nope, we're just putting that in there so you don't completely. It was almost like they put that scene in there for the thinking people in the audience not to abandon the movie right then and there. It was almost like they were carrot on a stick, just we keep sitting here. We're going to get better. Then we have this. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to say something?
No. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Then we have a moment where I think his name is either Eldridge or Etheridge, the specialist, the squirrely guy. He's talking to, I guess he's the army psychologist or doctor or something like that who specializes in their mental health.
He is, and they keep addressing him as a colonel, even though he's wearing the Oakleys of a major. Just a little.
Yeah. Those details, they just get right by you, don't they?
Yeah.
And the specialist is still very broken up about Guy Pearce's death at the beginning of the film because, as you saw from the clip we showed, the specialist hesitated and didn't know what to do, and he didn't shoot the butcher when he had the chance. So the butcher was able to plug in the code and kill his CO. So you have this moment here.
Right now, what are you thinking about?
This is what I'm thinking about, Doc. Here's Thompson, okay? He's dead. He's alive. Here's Thompson. He's dead. He's alive.
So he's beating himself up about the fact that he didn't take the shot. He didn't go on instinct. He hesitated. He choked, and his CO is dead. Okay, I'm looking at a lot of khaki thumbnails here. So we can play the next clip, or we can deconstruct that if you want, Tony. It's up to you.
Look, I don't know if that's like I don't think that guy of Aldrich, the actor playing him, I don't think he was bad in the whole movie. That is probably the worst scene of the whole thing for me. Like, it just was not believable. Yes, certainly a medical officer, if he's concerned about a particular soldier, he would come and sit down and talk to him. But that whole thing with the rifle, it's like, I don't know. I can't put my finger on what it is. That there's something about it just felt completely disingenuous, I suppose is the word. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So that's twice. All right. We're moving on to clip 8, which I can't exactly remember what is in this clip, but we're going to watch it, digest it, and then react to it. Here we go.
Excellent.
We got a lot of eyes on us, James. We need to get out of here.
I get it.
Sergeant Sanborn is asking if you'll please put your headset back on.
I really disengaged from this movie at this point. Obviously, I kept watching it as as I said, an intellectual exercise, but as far as being invested in it, this is where I got off my horse. This is where I said, okay, this is ridiculous. There were two problems that I had with this scene. There were probably a bazillion problems for anybody who's actually a veteran of the Iraqi conflict. As a civilian, I have two problems with this scene. One, I'm not understanding why this guy is. I get that they're only 3 dudes, but we've seen them always walk through cordon groups of army soldiers with Humvees and things like that at the perimeter. So they're not alone. There are guys around. But Sanborn is now saying, we got a lot of eyes on us. We got to get out of here. And I'm going, you're in Baghdad or wherever you are. There's people around all the time. This is not going to change from day to day. I don't understand the threat here. This is also a scene where the specialist is seeing the guy with the video camera on the roof filming this. And down on the ground, James is trying to find out where this bomb, this IED that's been installed in the trunk of this car, where its detonation switch is. So he's been ripping up the seats in the back. He's been ripping up the dashboard and the glove compartment. He's been ripping up everything, trying to find the detonation switch. And then he gets sick of Sanborn in his ear, so he throws his headset away, as you saw, and then flicks off the specialist when the specialist relays Sanborn's request to get back into communication with him. I'm sensing in the real world there would be consequences for this behavior.
Yeah, well, something that the movie doesn't depict, right? They depict the back and forth between Sanborn and James a lot. They never show James's superior, and he would have a lot of superiors going up the chain. You know, there is one scene which it might be at the end of this bit here, where Colonel Matt Swafford comes over, David Morse. Colonel Matt Swafford comes over and he's like, a real hotshot, aren't you? And I'm like, oh man, this. And I remember when I first watched it, I was like, this is the scene where it's going to take a turn, and this guy's actually going to get thrown in the brig for putting all of these soldiers' lives at risk. And it comes to nothing. It comes. Oh, happen.
Dude, I'm so glad you said that, because I thought the same thing. I was like, oh, this guy's about to read him the riot act. This guy's about to drag him off the site.
Yeah.
And then nothing. Like, it was the most surreal. Okay, I have part of that clip. And guys, if you haven't seen this movie, this is the weirdest scene tonally that you'll ever see, and I can only show you a bit of it. So, okay, I'm just going to play it.
Yes, sir. Well, that's just hot shit. You're a wild man, you know that? Yes, He's a wild man. You know that? Why don't I shake your hand? Thank you, sir. Yeah. How many bombs have you disarmed?
And guys, I thought he was pulling him in to eventually just start screaming at him. Like, just, you know, sort of like, he sort of like emotionally disarms him at first and, you know, being polite-ish. And then I really thought it was leading into disciplinary action. No.
Yeah.
He actually is like 800 and something bombs. And then he's like, hey, can you give us some advice on how to disarm IEDs? And you're just sitting there watching the shaky cam. And I feel like I'm in a bad episode of The Office. I'm just like, what's going on here? Because then it just cuts away. Like, he actually thought this guy was really cool. And I'm going, huh? Like,
Just before that clip ended, I think he says to him, like, how many bombs have you disarmed? And his response is like 850 something. And I'm like, whoa, there was that person in the chat, you brought up their comment earlier. They would have to wait 4 or 5 hours for EOD to arrive. That's just to arrive at a site.
Right.
For him to have personally diffused 850 something bombs, he would have been in the army for 120 years. For that, they could have just said 85, and that would be an impressive number.
Right.
850. What?
Mm-hmm.
American soldiers do a 12-month tour. That's 365 days. That's 3 or 4
Yeah.
bombs a day. Like,
yeah. I almost feel like this movie was cruising with that scene to show that, you know, because they're pushing this narrative that war is this adrenaline high for some people, and they become like war junkies. And this superior officer is just as big a war junkie as this other guy, and that's all he admires. And he's lost in this idea that because this guy is such a wild man that he's head over heels for him. It's bromancing with this guy. Jason Anderson says that scene was selling me a punch in the face, and I want my punch in the face. Yeah, it's selling the idea. It's building for this. You know, he's going to hit James, and he never does. And then Man of Action says, should have. I got my ass shredded for something even less mundane. Yeah, it's so weird.
So just to backtrack to that car bomb, right? They get called to this location. They talk to an Iraqi police officer. It's like the car's very suspicious. It's all sagging in the back, which is another combat indicator you're looking for. You don't know whether they've got a bomb or whether they've just got, 400 pounds of corn. God knows. And they're evacuating the building. And I believe, if I remember correctly, it's a UN building, which they don't talk about. You see a sign somewhere. It's a UN building of some sort. Now, when Sanborn's saying, hey, we got a lot of eyes on us, we got to get out of here, that is a what we call a combat indicator in Iraq. If someone starts filming you with a video camera, but the thing is, they wouldn't just be standing out in the open like that.
Right.
Because, they want to film the murder and killing of coalition soldiers.
Right.
It's not how you do it.
Yeah. I mean, it literally looked like Jeff Goldblum from Jurassic Park with a video camera standing on a rooftop filming it. Like, yeah.
Now, the way that car bombs were used in Iraq, they were driven to a target and were detonated. They weren't driven to a target right out front of the UN building, and then the guy got out and went, I'm going to leave this really suspicious car here, and I'm going to come back later, which gives him gives James an opportunity to rip the car apart looking for the detonator. And he continues to do that after they tell him the building has been cleared. It's like, what are you doing? Just it's
so. Yeah,
but once that vehicle got to that destination, I'm assuming a UN building being protected by Iraqi police with lots of, government officials inside it. That's a good target. That would have been blown up the moment that vehicle got within its radius. It would not have been parked there and have them.
Right.
It's just completely illogical. If Mr. Spock watched this film, he would spontaneously combust. It's
we are Tony, you and I are on the verge now of a scene I think that we both really, really don't like. I mean, we already don't like this movie, but I think I can't remember if the scene where they beat each other up that night while drinking in his barrack, if that's after this or if it's after the next scene. I think it's after the next scene. Which I didn't get a clip of because I thought it was so repugnant that I was just like, no, we'll just talk through that scene. But if I recall, the next scene in this movie, the next major sequence involves them out in the desert running into British mercenaries. All right, so everybody, I'm going to play a little bit of an opening here for this. They run into, of all people, Ray Fiennes out in the desert with 3 or 4 other guys driving in a GMC Suburban with a flat tire. And 2 captured Iraqi soldiers or Iraqi insurgents, terrorists, whatever you want to call them. They are apparently on a wanted list, and that's why these guys have captured them, and they're taking them back to get their just desserts, whatever they are. But they can't get their tire changed. And after a tense exchange, because the Americans don't recognize them as British mercenaries, then they figure it out. they decide to help them with the tire. I'm going to play this little moment here, and then we'll move on to the next bit.
No good, boss. This wrench is too small.
All right, solutions, anyone?
I think there's another wrench in the back of the Humvee if you want to check.
I'll give it a try.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, I've got a lot of issues with this. When they first pull up, when they first pull up in the Humvee, they see these guys. You know, they have the shamars all wrapped around their heads, so you can't tell what nationality they are. Can't remember his name. The special, the guy gets up in the turret on the 50 cal.
Oh yeah, I've got that clip too. Yeah,
Falcon and Hawkeye get out of the vehicle. And it's like, put your gun down, put your gun down, and the whole time they're doing that, they're not staying behind the cover of their vehicle. They keep walking towards them, closer and closer and closer, which is not a good idea. Right. Why at no point did Ralph Fiennes, in his fine English accent, go, it's all good, we're British? No, it's this fabricated suspense again. They've got to wait till they get really close, and he puts all of his guns down for him to then unmask himself and reveal the worst Ray Fiennes performance in movie history.
Yeah.
He then asks them, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, he could have just simply said, "Oi, yank wanker." Like, no, like he could have just yelled.
He would have.
Yeah, yeah. Like, yeah. Okay.
Then he says to them, and it's a little detail, a little bit like the Colonel wearing Major's Oak Leaves.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're talking about the tire, and well, there's a couple of little things here. They're talking about the flat tire, and he's like, "Oh, you know, don't you have a spare?" He's like, "No, we've got a spare. We don't have a wrench."
Which also, go tell everybody why that's a problem.
So, for Americans who don't understand this, for English people, the word wrench is a verb, not a noun.
Right.
You can wrench someone's heart out. You can wrench a door handle. But what they're asking for is a wheel brace or a tire iron. Mm-hmm. We normally call it a wheel brace.
Right.
It's not a wrench. So I know it's a little thing, but you've got these English guys asking for. They wouldn't ask for that.
But that's the funny part. Sorry, go ahead.
And I am telling you now, these guys are supposedly, you know, they look well equipped. They're kind of undercover. They've definitely got experience. There's no way that these morons would be out there without at least 2 spare tires. Every vehicle would have a wheel brace. It would have a jack. It would have a med kit. It would have spare ammo. And all of this equipment would be checked before they went anywhere.
Yep.
This is one of those very insulting films that has taken the option to portray the British as complete morons.
Mm-hmm. And also mercs. Like, the only British you see in the movie are mercs, which is like, yeah, I know that there are private security and other people out there and mercs, and they're always in a war zone, but this is the only representation we're going to get here. Ra, thank you for this. He also points out, you know, spanner, which is for, you know, what a crescent wrench is called in the United States is called a spanner over in England, which is actually why, for you Star Wars fans, notice that in The Empire Strikes Back, when Han Solo is trying to fix the Millennium Falcon in the asteroid field, he says, "Bring me the hydro spanner." He doesn't say, "Bring me the hydro wrench." He says, "Bring me the hydro spanner." It was all part of that British influence on producing those films in England at the time. But anyway, I digress. So yeah, these are these conceits that end up breaking the movie. And what breaks that further is that I got confused. One, I noted the nomenclature issue, but also in the United States, we don't call that a wrench. That is called a tire iron. A wrench is a crescent wrench, or we call what the British call a spanner, we call a crescent wrench.
Yeah,
we don't call a tire iron a wrench. I've never heard anybody call it that. And sometimes people have called it a lug wrench. Sometimes, but most of the time they call it a tire iron.
Yeah,
I don't know.
The weirdest thing of all is that how their biggest issue is that they don't have a wrench when there are so many tools in this scene.
Uh-huh. Yeah. 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 B.A. Baracus is rolling over in his grave watching this scene. He's thankfully alive, but he's rolling over in his living grave watching this scene. Like, real? Oh, I know it seems like I'm overreacting, guys, to a small thing, but it's not really a small thing. It's these kinds of things that compound on each other until the realism completely falls apart. And then you're just left to go. Because verisimilitude, guys, in a movie is not dependent on real world scenarios. In other words, you build the rules of a world even if it's fantastical, which is why Lord of the Rings from Peter Jackson works so well, because he built the rules and then he stuck to the rules, even though it's a world we'll never inhabit. But when it's our world, you better get those things down and you better not compromise flagrantly. You better choose your compromises very carefully, because it doesn't take many and suddenly your film is toast. Okay. This is the next part of this scene I don't understand. And I'll explain after I show the clip. I am not a soldier. I've never been. I was never blessed to have been born in the early or late 1920s, so that I could have been an RAF fighter pilot in the Battle of Britain, which was I think that was my warfare calling. It just didn't happen. Anyway, I digress. So, would British, not just British, I should say. I'm sorry. I'm letting the movie influence me. Would mercenaries be allowed to just climb all over British or American army equipment? I mean, I know that they're suddenly in the middle of a firefight with Iraqi snipers from some distant place. And I know that decisions in real time are never perfect, but am I off base in saying that a Merc would just jump up into the 50 cal point of a Humvee and just go to, I mean,
well, the biggest issue is the fact that there isn't an American soldier still in that turret.
Right.
That's what normally that they wouldn't have gotten out.
Mm-hmm.
Their job is the protection of the guys in that vehicle. There have been incidents during the Iraq conflict where contractors would work alongside military to defend buildings and things like that. There's some quite famous footage from probably from around 2004 where a whole heap of Blackwater guys were on the roof of defending a building in Fallujah with American soldiers, and but these guys probably lived in that same building and knew these people. It's a bit like that guy would certainly know how to operate that 50 cal machine gun, but it would be the American soldier would be there. It's very, very odd.
Yeah.
The fact that Ray finds is returning fire, like little bits of it he's like Charlie Go. So what they do, it's called fire and maneuver, where you kind of direct your team. So you always want to have someone laying down covering fire while the other person's moving back. The thing is, you don't stand up as tall as Ralph Fiennes does and just fire like this. You get down on your belt buckle, or at least kneeling, to make yourself a smaller target. But then, of course, somehow or another, all of the British guys get killed.
Yeah. I think there's like one left, maybe, and he's hiding in that ditch with the specialist.
Yeah. So what they do, so they get into the ditch, and then Ray finds he's up there with a Barrett 50 caliber sniper rifle, trying to take out these targets, and then he gets shot and killed by the Iraqi sniper.
Who's in the Adobe shack.
Yeah. So now all of a sudden, Sanborn and James find themselves behind a 50 caliber machine gun. And James is spotting for the sniper, which that's kind of correct. You have a spotter there.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know the amount of training these guys have got to go through to be EOD techs? It's a very specialist skill.
Mm-hmm.
For you to then also be able to have that kind of sniper training, you would most likely have trained as a sniper first. When Sanborn says in the film he came from intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
become a sniper, and then decided to do like an employment transfer to go off and basically start your career all over again to be an EOD tech.
Right.
But somehow or another, they're able to make these, 1,000-yard shots and kill people. And it's those mercenaries wouldn't be carrying a 50 cal if they didn't know how to use a Barrett. It's not never mentioned, but it's kind of implied that there may be ex-SAS guys or something like that. To have them kind of all wiped out so easily, and then have these 2 EOD techs sit up on this hill just sit there on this hill for ages. Yeah. The same place where the SAS guy just got shot. Something that you learn is that when you're taking aim shots from a piece of cover, you take a shot, you get into cover, you don't pop back up in the same place because the sniper might be looking at you.
Mm-hmm.
You would get down into that, they call them waddies, the dried up ditch. They would get back into the waddy. They would move 20 meters across and get up in a different position.
Yep.
But there's the whole thing where their ammunition is jamming in the rifle.
I am so glad you brought this up. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's jamming in the rifle, but well, if it sounds like you've got the clip.
I've got a brief moment of the clip, and then we can discuss it. Here we go.
Yep.
You see? Yep. Oh, shit. It's the blood's making him jam.
Okay. I own firearms. I'm not a, Jesse James level firearms, super soldier or anything like that, but I've been around firearms my whole life. Not that level of firearm, but assault rifles and things like that, battle rifles especially, I have a lot of experience shooting rifles and handguns and all kinds of stuff. So this is a question I want to pose to you because I plead I take my ego out of the equation. I am not a know-it-all. I don't know all the things, Tony. All right. I really don't. Okay. I'm saying that right now. And one of the things I'm really glad that I don't know is what fresh blood in a magazine can do when it's, put into the rifle. I don't know. I'm skeptical since it's such fresh blood, but I don't know. So Tony, walk us through this scene and the problem with this, if there is one.
I don't think that fresh blood would stop you from chambering around. Mm-hmm. Certainly not in a 50 cal. Like the power of that spring, that recoil spring is so. Mm-hmm. Like what it made it, you may have trouble ejecting the empty casing once you fired your round, possibly. But yeah, I don't think it's going to jam the weapon system. But let's say that it does. Mm-hmm. So take the magazine off, and he gives it to James, and he's like, there's blood in it. Why doesn't he clean it himself?
Yeah.
Why do we go through this whole rigmarole of him crawling on his belly, turning around, giving it to the other guy who's kind of freaking out a little bit, and he's like,
right.
Yeah, and to the point where he's telling him to spit on it and wipe the blood off. And he eventually gets down and spits on it as well. And he's like, I like this.
And they use the water camel. They start hosing it down with the water camel.
What the hell?
I think they needed some sort of motivating factor, which again, it gets back to that whole thing we talked about earlier about how there's these moments where you think they're going to create character arcs that then go nowhere. So like we were saying, where Sanborn gets mad at James after the first mission they go on together and says, you talk to me and then so that I can keep us alive. And we're all supposed to keep each other alive. You can't not talk to me. What does he do on the next thing? He throws his headset away. Now we're in this thing after we've seen the specialist. with the doctor saying, I hesitated and Thompson died. I hesitated and Thompson died. So now we're having this moment where the specialist, Etheridge or Eldridge or whatever his name is, something like that, he is now bonding with James, and James is being nice to him as his CO. James has never been mean to him. He's just been disengaged. And now he's like, you're doing good, man. You're doing good. This is working. We're going to get this blood off here. You're doing fine, man. You're doing fine. He's giving him all that pep talky kind of stuff. Ultimately, guys, it ends up going nowhere later on. But in the moment, yeah, they clean off the magazine, and then they start this whole thing of trying to shoot these guys in this shack several hundred meters away. And the idea from the editing is that they're there for a really long time. Like it's one of these epic sniper hunts, even though they never move. And in the background, the specialist spots a threat from their 6 o'clock. He spots somebody directly behind them, meters away, across some railroad tracks, and surrounded by goats or sheep or something. So then we have this moment right here. Oh, wait. First I have, we have this moment right here.
Hey, Will? Yeah? At your 6 o'clock, I see movement on the bridge. Should I fire?
It's your call, buddy.
Like, in any normal screenplay where they understand it, even if it's fictional, where they understand character motivations, this is the moment where that character who has gone through his mistake and then his wrestling with that mistake, and then this is his opportunity to learn from his mistake. He's still, what should I do? Should I fire? Yeah. Like, dude, you're in a war situation. You're only a few days from your tour of duty being over, because they keep showing that every mission, now this many days until they get to go home, this many days until they get to go home, and you're going, you're not exactly a spring chicken at this. So, and again, it's all engineered drama, engineered emotional business. That's how I took it. I don't know if it bothered you as much as it did me, Tony, but I wanted to reach through the screen.
Please bring up Scott Hughes' comment.
Okay. Barretts were tested by doing mag dumps after being dug up out of sand. Blood would not affect it. Yeah.
And his next comment, they operate at 60,000 PSI.
Yeah.
Pounds
See,
per square inch.
Scott, that's what I thought. I didn't know numbers, but that's what I thought. I'm like, huh? And then PM, I love he says, so the weakest gun ever? I love Jason Anderson says, can you just picture the writer's room on this one? Hey, Dennis, you got blood in your phone that one time, right? It stopped working, right? Guns are the same, right?
And there was a Matthew. It's up a little bit further. Matthew.
Here right here. Oh, burn.
100%.
This
is a situation where you throw a smoke grenade. Yeah.
Yep.
But that was probably the only one he had.
Yeah, he used up his one smoke grenade, and they also used up like their 7 sandbags. That's why they couldn't put them on the roofs of their barracks. There's just not enough sand. All right, so I did it again. They kill the guys in the shack finally with the sniper rifle. They drink a few Capri Suns at the same time. That they make that a big deal. And then they're called out to. I'm trying to remember if I don't think I have any of the business in the next bit, so we're just going to talk through this. I think I was so mad about this bit that I couldn't even bring myself to pull clips from it, because I didn't even know what to pull to really illustrate it for people. Talking through it's going to be easier. There are vendors that are allowed inside the American troop compound during the day to sell things like bootleg DVDs, snacks, things like that. They're vetted by the commanding authorities, whatever. They're approved. And that's the thing that I recall from my friends who were veterans in Iraq and everything like that. They would get bootleg discs and all that stuff.
100%. I actually, when I watched Hurt Locker the first time, I bought a bootleg DVD from a little kid on the base, and that's how I watched it.
Wow. Yeah.
So that bit is correct. Yeah.
Yeah. They're then called out to a situation. First James kind of gets to know this little boy who sells the DVDs, tries to get soldiers to buy the DVDs. He knows a little bit of English. He knows a lot of curse words, all that kind of stuff. And he loves football, British football, soccer. And he, messes with him a little bit, tells him that last DVD you sold me was crap. And, if you don't give me a better DVD this next time, jokes with him about, I'm going to cut your head off with a dull knife, which is like, ha ha ha, funny. You're a funny guy, James. Bad script writing. So then, because that's how you make friends in a war zone when you're the invading group. You totally threaten underage people with violence. So anyway, they're then called out to a situation involving a body they found of a young boy. And the boy has been eviscerated so that they can put explosives inside him. And James thinks this is the boy that sold the DVDs. At the same time, as they're moving that boy out of that he disarms, and there's some, gross going into the incision and trying to find all this stuff. They bring him back out. James carries him out, a la Anakin carrying his mom in Attack of the Clones back from the Sand People village. They got him all wrapped up, carries him out of the facility, puts him in the ambulance. The doctor who was trying to help Etheridge, whatever his name is, he gets blown up by an IED that's hidden in a pile of concrete rubble. He just gets blown up right after the ambulance pulls away. So now the specialist is all messed up. And James is really upset about this little boy having been killed, ostensibly. So the next day, he decides the best thing to do is to go and start interrogating the DVD guy, who's an adult, Iraqi adult, who does not speak English. And the boy is not there, obviously, to sell DVDs with him. So he starts demanding that he tell him what happened to this kid who he called Beckham because he was into football.
Yep.
The guy doesn't know English, doesn't know what he's talking about. James walks off really angry. The sun goes down, the vendors pack up. This guy gets in his truck. James carjacks him, basically, puts a gun to his head, and he's like, keep driving. And he puts this hoodie on himself, and they drive out of the base. And he's like, you drive me to the house where Beckham's family was. The guy doesn't speak English. He drives him to a house and then drives off, as a smart man would, because this guy's clearly crazy. This dude breaks into the house, interrogates a family, an Iraqi family at gunpoint who doesn't know anything about what he's talking about. The wife assaults him, rightfully. He gets out of the house and then starts walking back in the middle of the night with his hoodie on, with his army pants on, through very crowded nightlife Iraqi streets. Now, Tony, first of all, he's AWOL from his base. But second of all, how plausible is this?
So, when I suggested this film to you, I knew I was going to have to watch it again to refresh my memory.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned something. I think I sat down like Tuesday or Wednesday this week to watch the film. And I realized that I had never seen the end of this film. Because when I watched this movie 12 or 13 years ago in Iraq, and it jogged my memory, he's at night, he's walking through these crowded town streets, people all around, little vendors everywhere. and all he's got his hood up. He's doing his, Captain America in disguise thing, but he's got digital camouflage pants on, boots.
Mm-hmm.
He's not Iraqi. He doesn't even have dark hair.
Mm-hmm.
And it jogged my memory. But back in 2010 or whenever the hell I watched this, I went, and excuse me for swearing on your channel,
Mm-hmm. No,
I went, fuck this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I refused to watch any more of it.
Yeah.
He would not have made it through that street. No way. He would. Him leaving the base like that, it must have been suicidal, because any soldier would know that
Mm-hmm.
you have, it's a one-way ticket. There is no way to return.
Yeah.
When he does get back to the base and he has a confrontation with the soldier at the front gate, and he's like, pins him down, and he's like, I went to the local whorehouse, and he's like, if you tell me where it is, I'll let you in. You're like, what? I don't know if they have whorehouses in Iraq. They probably do. I don't remember any British, American, any kind of soldiers ever wanting to visit an Iraqi whorehouse.
Right.
Just no.
No. Yeah.
It's also a Muslim country where
right.
Going way back to the scene where they're drinking and fighting.
Yeah.
You know how hard it is to get alcohol in Iraq, particularly if you're in the military, because it's against the Uniform Code of Military Justice.
Right.
There's just so much. At this point, the movie skips into a kind of fantastical level of storytelling that I expect from a direct-to-DVD Steven Seagal movie.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How in the hell, and this is a serious question, Michael, how in the hell did this film dupe the Academy into being?
The Academy is, and I say this not with intent to humor, but you're welcome to laugh, everybody, if you think it's funny. The Academy really is up its own ass when it comes to its creators and their tight-knit group of artists. And they see the world through a completely myopic lens, like this it's very distorted and pretentious. 1 minute in 1998, they're giving the Academy Award for Best Picture to Shakespeare in Love, even though, as much as I don't like this movie, Saving Private Ryan was on the ticket then, and it was more than likely because, one, politically, they'd already given it to Spielberg for Schindler's List, and also they were probably in an anti-war mode at that point. But then, for Hurt Locker's year, they were probably in a support the troops mode, and Catherine Bigelow was this known entity who had directed Point Break, and then she would go on to direct Zero Dark 30, and she directed other things. So there was all this kind of prescient emotion wrapped up in that movie, even though, because Hollywood doesn't care about realism. If they cared about realism, Shakespeare in Love never would have won. The insulting thing about that, as I bring it up again, is they usually never give a comedy Best Picture. Technically, Shakespeare in Love was billed as a comedy romance, a dramedy. Yeah. Private Ryan should have been a shoe-in. Other films that year should have been shoe-ins. Nah. They gave it to that weird movie. Now, we know that Weinstein was behind some of that and everything too, but that's not a unique situation. There are other Academy wheel greasing guys like Weinstein was. There are other people who jockey and vie, So
Weinstein would also, he would have more with Inglourious Bastards, wouldn't he? Aren't all of Tarantino's films from?
Yes. My point is, I'm just
the same year,
yeah. I'm simply pointing out that there are a lot of guys who were like Weinstein as far as, I don't mean what Weinstein did to women. I'm talking about as far as the Academy Awards were concerned. A lot of people wheel and deal and try and, you know, get their film in a better position because everybody jockeys for having a vote. Like I used to intern at Vertigo. No, I'm sorry, not Vertigo. Outlaw Productions. Those are the guys that they've been producers for years. They did Training Day and the Santa Claus with Tim Allen, and they did a bunch of films. And they were voters for the Academy. So they would get all the screening tapes. It was VHS still, even in the early 2000s. They would get VHS screeners to watch the movies and then send in their votes. So you would get to see like all these movies, like while Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter were still in theaters, the first films in the series, I was watching them on VHS tapes from my internship. So it's this weird kind of thing. They're all very much looking at it from a lens where reality is not a factor. Like I don't think they've ever given out an Academy Award for Best Picture to a film because it got it all right. Like it was all so realistic that it got it right. They look at it from these weird angles. And I mean, I was watching this movie the whole time because it's on the front of the Blu-ray. It's like Best Picture, you know, boom. I can understand why the movie company would want to put that on the cover of the Blu-ray. But I'm watching it the whole time going, how did this movie win Best Picture? How?
Yeah.
And it had to have been, when I say political, I don't mean political like we think of it. I mean Hollywood politics. It had to have been a political sentiment at the time about this film from many different aspects. Yeah.
So I shared a small snippet with you yesterday of Roger Ebert's review of this film, and he's like, it's you know, got this wonderful anti-war message. I'm like, it doesn't even have a message. It has no message. I can't remember when you mentioned Training Day just before. I can't remember when that came out.
01, I think.
Oh, that
or no. Maybe it was maybe it was 02. Something like it was 01. It was 02, 01 or 02, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, because we had Training Day. I remember that being there was a big thing about Denzel Washington, black actor, getting the Academy Award. Halle Berry, I think, did she get it the same year for
Monster Ball?
Monster Ball, yeah. This, I believe, was the first female director to ever win an Oscar for directing. Probably the first and only at this point. You know, I think Zero Dark 30 has some problems. It is far superior to this. Far superior. The characters in Zero Dark 30 don't act like complete idiots the whole way through the film.
Right.
But yeah, it completely astounds me. And going back to that scene, the scene that inspires obviously James to leave the base and go and try and track down this kid. They find the body of the kid, who we discover later on it's actually not him. He just pops up again.
Yeah. Yeah. He wakes up the next morning and the kid is like back at the booth, and he ignores him at that point.
That scene is unnecessarily grotesque. Why, for any reason, would an insurgent sew a bomb inside the body of a dead child? For what? Like, there have been instances in Iraq where they would put bombs in the carcasses of dead donkeys, dogs, camels, but that was a common thing to see on the side of the road. A dead donkey or lots of dead dogs on the side of the road. They would hide them in the carcasses. Seeing dead human children on the side of the road, that's not a common thing.
Right.
So I don't know.
It blew me away. I was, and I don't mean in a positive way. Like, wow. I mean, like,
blew your hair back. You were just like,
yeah. I'm like, come on, guys. Like this is. I know you guys need a sequence like when they were trying to save that dude's life in Black Hawk Down. These modern war films all need a sequence where hands are going into a human body. But guess what? This was a very big miscalculation, especially given that it's yet another plot thread that goes nowhere.
Yep.
It is yet another whole thing that creates more unrealistic choices and ultimately leads to nothing. And the best part is when you mentioned Roger Ebert talking about how this was such a powerful anti-war film. Because guys, all of you out there in the chat who may or may not have seen this movie, when we get to the end, you're going to ask yourself how that man thought this was an anti-war film. Roger Ebert, for those of you that don't know, you all know he was a critic. But Roger Ebert was also a guy who really wanted to, one, be part of the film industry on a more active level. And he was also obsessed with Russ Meyer movies. He was close friends with Russ Meyer, who made all of the X-rated breastploitation films of the 60s and 70s. So like Vixen and Super Vixens and Ultra Vixens and all that. And so Roger Ebert actually wrote a movie for him called Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, which was supposed to be like a sequel to Valley of the Dolls, which Russ Meyer had nothing to do with. Roger Ebert also was somebody that kept hoping that Russ Meyer would hook him up with some of the women that were in his films. My point in bringing all this up is simply to say, Roger Ebert didn't commit any crimes. He wasn't a Weinstein or anything like that. What I'm kind of saying is that he had this very weird attitude toward movies, and his opinions about movies were very weird, and his agenda was also very weird at times. So sometimes his opinions were all over the place, and he saw weird stuff in movies. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah. So when I said earlier, you know, if I could sum up this film in one word, I would say irresponsible, because this is not an anti-war film.
Right.
This is a recruitment video. This is trying to. Can you imagine the hundreds of people who took this movie at face value, that it was Best Picture, and man, that's what it's. Being an EOD tech is that guy's he's so cool. I want to be that, and then they join the army and want to become an EOD tech.
Yeah.
And they're going to spend the next 4 or 5 years of their enlistment going, geez, I got ripped off.
Yeah, it really feels like a recruitment ad at the end.
Yeah.
I mean, it really does. I know we haven't gotten there yet. I want to bring up Zantara's comment real quick. She says, I love Shakespeare in Love. Don't think it deserved Best Picture, but if it stopped Saving Private Ryan from getting it, bravo. Zantara, I totally agree with you on that. What I was trying to say, I was trying to find a word, and then I was about to say intimidate, which is not the word I'm wanted to use, is that if you had to put money in 1998 on which film was gonna win Best Picture, we'd have all lost the bet. That's what I'm trying to say, is that if you were to put money on it, you would have put your money on a Private Ryan or a Inglourious Bastards, or something like that. Even in As Good as It Gets, which was up for Best Picture, you would not have put your money on Shakespeare in Love. And yet, because of the wheeling and dealing that went on behind the scenes with people like Weinstein, that's how these things fell out. But I totally agree with your sentiment. Absolutely. Yeah. So I said, so, all right. He comes back. The kid is actually alive. It comes to nothing. Then we go on to this next. He gets back so late that Sanborn is trying to get him on the radio, because he's like, we're being called out to this explosion. They've blown up a tank or something like that. We've got to figure out how. So they go out to this huge flame-ridden crater that's in the middle of some part of the city. And James says, I got to go look at the blast radius. So he goes out to look at the blast radius. And when he does, he makes, just as if we thought this movie couldn't get any more baffling from a logic perspective, this happens.
Perfect vantage point outside the blast radius to sit back and watch us clean up their mess.
Want to go out there?
Yes, I do.
I could stand getting in a little trouble.
No, man. This is bullshit.
So the guy who had no confidence is now saying, I could stand to get into a little trouble. Let's go do this. Sanborn, always the voice of reason, is saying, no, we have to let the engineers come in and solve this. There's no reason to go out as just three guys in the middle of the darkness where we think the guys that blew this bomb up are out there over that hill in the pitch black. And the CO gets mad, James, and he's like, no, you don't tell me no, I tell you no, and we're going. And I'm thinking, this is worse than how the crew treated each other in Memphis Belle. Like, this is crazy. Yeah. I can't believe this.
And Sanborn also says, he's like, we've got a platoon of infantry right behind us. You know, that's their job. And he's like, no, but it's got to be us. We are snipers, EOD. We're better than British mercenaries. Now we're going to be better than the entire American army. We're going to run off in the dark. And what do they get for it?
They get
gets wounded.
They get to a point, and this is the moment right before Aldridge gets wounded. This is the order that James gives.
All right, these alleyways are probably set up in a grid. We're gonna need to split up, flush them out. Sanborn, you take one. Aldridge, take two. I got three. Rally point at your intersection. Ready, move.
Wait, rally point when?
Now he's saying, we've got three alleys. Each one of us is going to take one alley. So now they're going into urban warfare, one person down each alley, and we're going to meet up somewhere at the other side. And everybody's going, all this. Sanborn's like, what rally point? You don't even know if there is a what? And he just runs off. And then Eldridge gets shot, and he's almost abducted. He's almost taken hostage. The only reason he gets shot is because James shoots him, trying to shoot the two guys carrying him.
Yes.
Brings him back. Eldridge is now Ethelred the Unready. That'd been a good name for him. Ethelred the Unready, in a reference to the Anglo-Saxon king. That'd have been great. See, if I'd have written that script and I'd have named him Ethelred, but then people have been like, I've never heard that name before. No, that's what the audiences here would have been like. I ain't never heard of no Ethelred as a surname. I was being poetic in my script writing. Anyway, so the guy that was hesitant, then bonded with James, then says, I could afford to get into some trouble, gets into some trouble, and then cusses James out as he's being airlifted out the next day because James Round shattered his femur in 9 places. You're lucky you got out of there without having your head cut off in some basement somewhere, but we'll ride right past that, okay? Because we got to have drama, drama internally, not drama towards the combatants on the other side.
In Iraq in 2004, when first of all they go off as a group of 3, but to then split up and take one alley each, the next morning they would have been in an orange jumpsuit, having their head brutally chopped off with a Bowie knife on Al Jazeera television. That's what would have happened to them. It just... Is that the end of the film, or have we got to subject ourselves to something more? I can't remember now. Isn't there then another bomb that's padlocked onto a guy?
There's a final bomb. I do want to point out, Melinda says, you're supposed to just accept the narrative without thinking and shovel it in. And then somewhere here, I just saw, Canuck says, D&D rule, never split the party. And it's true. You do not split up the party. That is a very, very bad idea. Also, I would like to address Ra's comment. He says, I think I'm the only one in the room that likes Saving Private Ryan. Ra, you're allowed to like whatever you like. Nobody is right or wrong in opinions about movies. I do want to psychologically brace you for the fact that when we end up talking about Private Ryan, it will be something like this. I hope you will join us and maybe, enjoy the different insights into the film, but no one's trying to change your mind if you really love it. Sincerely, there's no sarcasm there. Okay. There's another bomb. They go out the next day, and it is a guy who apparently has been forced into a metal, almost like a metal cage around his torso that's padlocked in 4 places with C4 or something strapped to it with a digital wristwatch timer. And they only have 2.5 minutes, and they realize that because the padlocks are made out of case-hardened steel, even their bolt cutters aren't going to get them off fast enough. James is in his bomb suit. Sanborn, of course, is just in his normal his fatigues and his combat gear. And Sanborn is trying to talk James into getting out of there, because even though this guy's begging for them to get him out of there because he didn't want to blow anybody up, and there's no way they can get him out. But James refuses to go. And it becomes another... right before, I should clarify this. Right before James walks out there, as Sanborn is suiting him up in the suit. This is after he's gotten one of his guys almost abducted and then airlifted out. This is after he's ignored them multiple times. This is after he's beaten Sanborn up during a drunken brawl in the barracks. Sanborn looks at him and says, "Hey, I just want you to know that's all water under the bridge. I don't want you to get out there and get killed. I want all this to go okay. You just go out there and do your job, and I got your back." And he's like, "Okay, I've got your back. Okay, we're all clear." Now, Sanborn is still the voice of reason. I'm not saying what I'm about to show you means that Sanborn's wrong. What I'm saying is that once again, James is a broken character in this script.
I gotta get these bolts off.
No. We had 1.5 minutes, man. We got to get out of here. Come on,
Sanborn, I got the suit. Just go.
So let me ask you this, Michael.
Uh-huh.
I know this might be quite the stretch for you, but try to imagine that you are an Iraqi insurgent who...
Jesse, this hold that thought. Jesse, this isn't about the fact that there's a bomb. It's about how these two guys are treating one another throughout this movie as an EOD team. I need you to plug in and figure it out, because we've been talking about this very thing for 1 hour and 53 minutes. Okay? All right, go ahead.
So imagine you are an Iraqi insurgent and you are a bomb maker for that particular faction, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have, at some expense and at risk to your own personal safety and security, you have built a bomb, and you want to use this bomb to blow up a particular target. Not a random target, because nothing was ever random. They want to blow up a particular target.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to padlock it to an unwilling person and then hope that he walks it to the building that you want him to go to?
Right.
And gets there before the timer runs out?
It felt very inefficient.
Work there. People were brainwashed by fanatical ideologies, and were told that they would, go to that where they get their 70 virgins, and I'm losing my words here. They become martyrs, and they would brainwash young men to do this kind of thing. If I was, as the interpreter keeps saying, please help him, he's a good man, he's a good man. If he was a good man, like, yes, you're going to be genuinely scared for your own safety, but wouldn't you also be scared for your neighbors and your family and your friends? And I'd be running as far away from them as possible, not standing in the middle of the town, just completely broken.
Yeah. Jesse, again, inflections don't come across very, very well in text. I'm just simply pointing out that we weren't talking about the bombs themselves. I do think this movie would have improved significantly at this point, where he's trying to get the padlocks off, if Adam West had just run up behind him in his Batman costume and said, "Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb," and then ran off again. Like that's the point that we're at with this movie. I was just trying to point out to you that in case there was any confusion, we're not talking about just the bombs. We understand bombs have to be in a movie about IED. I was referring to character interaction. And like Tony's saying, this is a very inefficient plan in order to detonate a suicide bomb, to strap it to an unwilling participant. It's very, yeah.
So
there's no reason to shut up, Jesse. There's no reason to shut up. You're fine.
The level of that the filmmakers feel like they have to keep raising the stakes with each scenario. That, you know, things get more complex. Like, so you're hiding a bomb inside a human body.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are you? Is this the Joker who's put a cell phone in that guy in the prison? And now this elaborate thing is. I don't know if they're taking clues from a Saw movie or what the hell they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very bizarre. But I keep coming back to me summing up this film in one word: irresponsible. If this was a responsible film, James would have died in this scene.
Yes.
As a matter of fact,
yes.
James would have died in the first bomb defusing scene.
Mm-hmm.
If it was a responsible film, Sanborn probably would have fragged his ass back like they used to do back in Vietnam.
Yes.
You know, he had a 365-day tour to complete, and this guy was going to get him killed. This film is irresponsible. But then we get all of a sudden, after that bomb detonates, he doesn't save the guy. The bomb goes off. He only barely makes it back far enough for himself to survive. And then the film just cuts to him in a supermarket. And I believe it was when I shared the link to this on Facebook, someone said on one of the comments on social media, as bad as the film is, that scene where he's staring at the wall of cereal, so many vets can relate to.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming this is a vet who's made this, and I don't mean to take away anything from his own personal experience, but I didn't understand what he meant, because I didn't relate to standing in a supermarket. I don't know what the movie was trying to say. Because
this whole sequence that we get led into. We get led into it by a conversation that Sanborn has with James after they come away from the guy who's rigged up to the locked up bomb. He explodes. They can't stop him. They barely survive it themselves because they're just at the edge of the blast radius. We have this moment here where they have this conversation, which then leads into the domestic life scene.
But you realize every time you suit up, every time we go out, it's life or death. You roll the dice.
And that to me is sort of the Private Ryan moment, where the film is already it's already showing that the people who've written it don't have any real experience with combat war. They're writing right past important details, and now they want to make a statement. I don't expect anybody in the chat who's a veteran or Tony here to verify anything like that. But I've interviewed war veterans from World War II on both sides of the conflict. I've interviewed North Korea war veterans, Korean war veterans. Vietnam veterans, Iraqi war veterans, and Afghanistan veterans. That was my job for a long time. Published in print, magazines, newspapers. That's what I did. Never once, in even the toughest questions that I was told by my publishers to ask, never once did anybody tell me that these are the kinds of conversations that they had with their friends, in foxholes or anything like that. There was nothing like this. This is always Hollywood coming in and then trying to put a banner on what they want their movie to say and be about. Like it's Hollywood it's the screenwriter and the director injecting their own feelings into this to try and make it poetry. And it's like, it just rings hollow. There's something very artificial about it. But if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. Like,
No, we're in complete agreement.
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to bring this up. Greg says, oh, come on. Riggs and Murtaugh had a much better relationship than this. And I will tell you that this is the way I feel about this movie.
This is thin, Riggs. This is very thin. This is anorexic.
So I just, unrealistic. So then he goes home so now we're up to where you were talking about. He's home. He's back from his tour. Evangeline Lilly is his wife, who's, I know she was briefly in the film earlier on a phone call, but it was very brief. Now they're in a grocery store. Yeah, they're in a grocery store. She tells him to get the cereal. She doesn't tell him which cereal. He stands there in the aisle and looks at a bazillion cereals. I thought that was probably the most unwittingly brilliant part of the movie, not for the movie itself, but because it showed the absolute crassness and sensory overload of just rampant capitalism at that point. It was just, and guys, I'm not an anti-capitalist. I'm an it's in your face, everything you could possibly want. Lucky Charms, honeycombs. If you're talking about modern marketing, that was a very effective visual. Because I'm going, he was told to get cereal. What the hell do you do? Totally apart from the film itself.
Do the cereal aisles in American grocery stores actually look like that?
Yes, they do. It's ridiculous. It's
okay. It's not quite.
Yeah. It's like, do I want peanut butter honeycombs or Reese's peanut butter cereal? Or do I want Captain Crunch peanut butter? Or do I, and you're just going, my God, dang. So I said, so now I don't care anymore. I thought this was a damning testament in the next scene, because in the next scene, he's helping his wife do the dishes after dinner or getting ready for dinner or something. It's unclear. Yeah. And he's trying to tell her about his experiences and also telling her that there's a need for more bomb techs. They still need him and he could re-up. And she's just ignoring him like he's not saying the words. She's just saying other things, trying to literally pretend like he's not talking. And I'm going, oh, is this how Hollywood feels about military spouses? Are military spouses all cold and unfeeling and don't care? Because if they're trying to sell the idea that she can't relate to what he's talking about, they're doing a very poor job of it. Yeah. Very, very poor.
Also, they're in the kitchen. I think she's peeling carrots or potatoes or something. And he's telling this story about a bomb incident. And that seemed incredibly disingenuous to me as well. That he would be having that type of a conversation with his wife so soon after returning. Yeah, it didn't smack true.
No, it didn't ring. It was again, it was another moment where it was engineered. It was engineered to make the audience feel a certain way. And in that particular instance, I don't even think they achieved what they thought they were achieving. I think the end result is 180 degrees from what they wanted you to get out of that scene. because I walked away from that scene going, they hate military spouses, meaning the creators of the film, not James, but the creators of the film. And what happens right after that? Right after that, it says something Iraq, and there he is in his fatigues getting off of an airplane to rock music. And I don't even mean like good rock music. It's like early 2000s new metal rock music. You know, it's Disturbed, or one of those bands,
it's very much so Disturbed kind of guitars and
and he gets off the plane. Yes, I do, Tim Ward. Yes, I do. And he gets off the plane and he's walking like, yeah, I'm back, baby. And the film is going, yeah, he's back, baby. How is this not at this point the most how Roger Ebert could turn around and say, oh, it's a very powerful anti-war message?
Yeah,
it's the most twisted message I've ever seen. I can't process this. And I saw The Mirror Has Two Faces with Barbara Streisand, and I thought that was the most twisted message movie I'd ever seen before. But holy hell, this one blows it away. The Mirror Has Two Faces, in a premise statement, is about an overweight woman whose boyfriend decides that he can't stay with her because she's overweight. The message of the movie is that you're supposed to love people for who they are, but he only comes back to her after she does this massive workout and has a complete body change and becomes like the new hotness. And then suddenly he's back. And everybody in the theater's going, but wasn't the message that he was the guy in the wrong and that you shouldn't, like what, like, and so this movie, this is the music that's playing at the end, guys. This is part of one of the last shots. I'm back. Yeah. Give up your bucket down with the sickness. Open up your get up and down with the sickness. Like, what is this shit? Like, I just, am I off base, man?
No.
Am I misreading this?
No, we're in the same headspace here.
And somebody named Analog Toys has sent a super chat. Thank you, Analog Toys, for the super chat. He says, Sum up this movie in one word. Sickness. This movie is sickness. There is something fundamentally broken about how this movie was conceived, especially if we believe that the writer did some firsthand journalism and was embedded. I use that word very liberally. That was his word, not mine. They wanted to get details right, but then they couldn't even get a major right from a colonel. Yeah. They get back. They don't get the number of people right in an IED squad. They don't know how to put the regulations together to create certain scenarios believably. They have this whole subplot where it doesn't even make sense about a guy getting so mad about an alleged child body that's sewn up with explosives that he goes AWOL from the base in the middle of the night and assaults an Iraqi family in their home. And I mean, it defies logic. Like, one of the most powerful sniper rifles in the world can't throw a round through it because of fresh, wet blood on the round.
So you summed up this movie in one word. I also did long before we even started the stream. I think I sent it to you in a private message a couple of days ago. So if we take our two words, so this is, imagine Hurt Locker's coming out with a 15th anniversary new 4K release, the Hurt Locker, and then it has a quote from War Stories from Michael and Tony. The Hurt Locker irresponsible sickness.
You know what it reminds me of? I will never take credit for this, but it reminds me of a few weeks ago, Matt Swafford from Reclaimers posted somewhere on Facebook. I can't remember if it was on Melinda's page or mine, but the discussion came up about Highlander 2. And he said that movie is aggressively poor. And I thought that was the funniest comment for a bad movie. So yeah, what you just said lines up with that very well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to anyone in the chat who hasn't seen this film, don't bother. Don't bother. Michael watched this film and I watched this film again so that we could entertain you guys. And I must admit, this last couple of hours I have found really entertaining. you know those people in the YouTube comments, we both get it. It's like, don't make videos about things you hate. I mean, there's a lot of things I don't hate. I actually think I hate this film. It's not too. Like I don't hate Playmates Ninja Turtles. I just think they're crappy.
Yeah.
But the people in the comments who say, don't make videos about the things you dislike. And it's like, why not? Because I've certainly enjoyed this 2 hours far more than I enjoyed the 2 hours watching that film.
I love how out of touch people are when they say that. You shouldn't make videos about things you hate because nobody wants to see that. I'm like, there is a 3.5 million subscriber channel called The Angry Video Game Nerd. And all he does is make videos about video games he absolutely effing hates. Like,
yep.
And again, I'm not saying that that's Tony and I don't make videos that are consistently just about things we don't like. We take things as we encounter them, and then we just tell you what we thought when we encountered them. The good or the bad, or in this case, the all bad, which is a rare thing, actually, on our channels. It's very rare that Tony or I encounter something that we hate every part of it. But it does happen because life is not a basket of candy canes, ladies and gentlemen. Life has some real turds in there. Like, yeah. Ryan, thank you for the super chat. He says, I love both your takes on films. Interested in Tony's view on the reconstruction of the Big Red One. Also, A Midnight Clear and 1941. See you both at Joe Fest this summer. Well, we will get to those films at some point, Ryan, and you will hear our takes on them for sure. I don't want people to, I know some people have an open, closed mindset about this kind of stuff. I'm going to make this very clear to anybody who's got their eyebrow raised at me right now. I enjoy what I do. And what I do, like in this 2-hour conversation with Tony about this movie, is something I really looked forward to. I'm enjoying this evening, this conversation, this exploration of this film. I can enjoy talking about something that I didn't like. So if you tell me to be quiet about it, you're taking away something that, or trying to take away. I'm never going to let you take it away from me. Let's be honest. But you're trying to take away something that I enjoy doing. So consider that, when you are doing your whole Pollyanna positive thing. Because then what'll happen is you'll then come back around and tell me what a horrible person I am, which is super positive. Way to be. Anyway.
Spot on.
But yeah, I appreciate okay. My night has been made. Michael singing Down with the Sickness has to be made into a GIF. It's just so stupid. Like, not the song, the way, that's the sound that's playing. It's the kind of music from that era that's playing when he's like, I'm back and I'm risking myself. And this is what I do, is I'm just this adrenaline junkie that doesn't play by the rules.
And I have a theory about this as well, because around that same time, mid to late 2000s, you had a lot of like Al-Qaeda Iraq putting these very, very graphic videos out on the internet of explosions and beheadings and things. But there was also a lot of American and British people cutting together footage that they were filming while out in Iraq, and photographs. And I have come across so many of these videos from American soldiers who have edited together footage and photos to the music Down with the Sickness from Disturbed. Seriously, I've got clips like this from 15, 20 years ago on my laptop. And I'm assuming that the filmmakers watched that and thought, oh, if we get something that sounds just like that, probably because on a $15 million budget, they can't get the rights to the actual song.
Right.
That's what the veterans like doing. It's like, yeah, veterans do, but and no offense to any veterans out there, we're not all cinematic artists.
Sure.
But we're yeah.
I just wanted to add that, yeah, very few people are. I'm not a cinematic artist either, but at least they're putting that music to real footage of their experiences. Like, it's not,
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, they didn't like fake something and then put the music to that and then act like it was real. Like, this, much like Private Ryan, is marketed as an authentic experience. And you're sitting there going, no, not really. And Keith Holmesley says, I'm no art critic and I know what I hate, and I do hate this. And yeah, like, Melinda says, I'm filled with hate. Those buttholes should try having life experiences and let the hate flow into them, as Disturbed taught us. True.
Yes.
And then Michael Schaefer says, Tony just made a video where he loved everything, all positive. Yes, he did.
Yeah.
And then George Aiken has a recommendation again, Carry On Up the Khyber, which I'm totally willing to do. Love those films. Ra, you watch a lot of bad movies like we do because you are trying to gain a barometer. You're trying to get a barometer feel for every corner of art and entertainment. And there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. Elvira, Mistress of the Dark is a masterpiece compared to Elvira's Haunted Hills. That is not a porno, by the way. That is just the name of her sequel to Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. It is innuendo. Why am I going down this rabbit hole? Ignore this. The point I'm trying to make is that one is camp, the other one is bad camp. But knowing that is not a bad thing to have in your arsenal.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah, and you're right, Jesse. This movie's off. It is off.
Yep. So I think I'm done talking about this absolute donkey turd of a movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I have really enjoyed this last couple of hours, Michael.
I have too.
My confidence in you was well placed. I knew you would. I knew you could see the bullshit through the trees.
Oh, can you imagine if we'd loaded this up and gone live and I'd be like, hey, everybody, I wanted to really thank Tony for recommending this movie to me. I'd heard all these good things about it for years and years, but I'd never gotten around to watching it. Time makes fools of us all. Watched it. God, it's such a good movie. Tony, thank you. Thank you. This movie is amazing. Like,
I knew that wasn't going to happen.
Had me on the edge of my seat.
It was important for me to I was probably going to save the Hurt Locker for later on in the series, but when we decided we needed to change things, it was important for me to do this because I remember when he's running through the crowded town at night with a hoodie on, and I, went, F this film, turned it off. I was in Iraq when that happened, and I was so offended that this was being marketed and advertised, but also talked about by all the critics and the Academy as this realistic depiction of the Iraq conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And although it's taken me 13 odd years, at least I've had an opportunity to express why I believe it's the complete opposite to that. And that is why it is irresponsible sickness.
The poster would say irresponsible sickness, Tony Roberts, Analog Toys. And then I would say, go watch Elvira's Haunted Hills instead, Michael French. Like that, that is that, but no, you're absolutely right, Tony. You're absolutely right. I am glad that I finally saw it, so that I, because I really do try to make sure that I don't critique movies I haven't seen. So like if there's a movie I haven't seen or a TV show, I always say, like, I've never judged Mandalorian. I don't have any hatred for it. I've never seen it. I can't really discuss Mandalorian myself. You know what I mean? I have my instincts about, say, Book of Boba Fett, for example. I can get enough context clues to know I'm either going to like it or not. I'm not that guy that's like, yeah, you know what? I just don't know if heroin's dangerous unless I try it for myself. Like I'm not that guy. I'm the guy that can look at it and go, yeah, that water's deep and it's really murky. I'm not going to go swimming in it, But in this case, I'm glad that I got to see the film, and finally I can have a conversation about it with anybody that tries to unwittingly tell me that it's like the greatest war film ever.
So my brother, I doubt he'll watch this. He doesn't watch a lot of my YouTube stuff, but I do love my brother dearly, and I don't mean this as an insult in any way. But if my brother sees a movie before I do, and I ask him what he thinks, he never seems to hate any movie. He's got 3 responses where he'll say, first of all, I loved it. Which me, when my brother says I loved it, I'm like, oh, I'm not going to like that film.
Right.
Then he says, it was boring. And I think, it might be okay. And then the other thing he says is, I didn't get it. And I'm like, I'm going to love this film. So the moment he said to me, he went to watch the first Venom with Tom Hardy. He came back and he texted me and he was like, bro, go and see Venom. It's awesome. And I went, oh no, I was really hoping that film was going to be good.
Right.
And for anyone in the chat, I know a lot of people like Venom. I like Tom Hardy. I really like Tom Hardy. That film is bad.
Yeah, I walked away with it feeling like that particular film was just, to me, it was just forgettable. Like there were some funny scenes with Tom Hardy, but ultimately I don't retain any of the movie. Similarly, Shazam was the same way. I just like, okay, there's some funny moments, but I don't retain it. Like it's not memorable. And then Zantara, thank you for the super chat. She says, so Michael, what do you think of actor Jack Sue? And sew your shirt buttons better. Huh? What?
Is that a comment about you saying so all the time?
I don't know. These were factory sewn on by Eddie Bauer, so that I've not.
Zantara's trying to get you to say so.
Oh.
It took me a while as well.
Yeah. No, that's good.
I'm not going to put you on the spot right here, Michael, but the next episode, it's your pick of the movie. Take some time to think about it. Let me know by next weekend, so I've got a week to watch. Whatever your choice. And
I would love. You know what I would love to do? I would love to find a movie that goes back to a campaign from way in the past. Like I would love to find a movie that even gets out of modern warfare, beyond Zulu. I wonder if we could find there of course there's movies like that. We just have to figure out which one it is.
Kingdom of Heaven.
Kingdom of Heaven. Yeah, let's devote 3.5 hours of it. No, I love Kingdom of Heaven, but should we ease into that, or should we can dive right into it if you want.
I probably going to go and watch it again. It would depend. Theatrical cut, director's cut. I don't know.
Oh God, see, that's where we get into. What about? I wonder if we could find something from like the Horatio Hornblower era, like a Sharps Rifles era kind of film. I wonder if we could find something like that. That'd be fun. That'd be different, but something historically based, like you know. I'll look.
There's a lot of Sharps Rifles made for TV stuff, with Sean Bean.
That's right. That's what I'm referring to. But I know it's a
Yeah.
TV show, so it's harder to. It's not even a mini, or is it a mini series? Is it a mini series?
No, I don't. I'm not
okay.
sure. I'm not 100%. I know my dad's a huge fan. He's got all the DVDs. So.
Right. Okay. I'll look into
have
it.
a think about it.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, see, Jeff, I just don't know if Master and Commander is based on. I know it's in a historical context, but I don't know if it's based on an actual series of events. I guess it is. I have a lot to say about that trailer.
Oh, people in here is like Gods and Generals, Glory, Stripes.
I mean, we're going to eventually cover a lot of different things, ZK. We'll cover a lot of different things.
Yeah,
Sharp.
well, given that American Sniper is an Iraq-based film,
right?
I'm much like Michael in this respect, where after doing this episode, I don't really want to touch on another Iraq film for several episodes.
Yeah.
I like to go somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there will be a lot of World War II.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd love to do something where we don't even have firearms. That'd be like you said, something where I bet you I can find a movie like Kingdom of Heaven that's not 3.5 hours long that we could start with and then kind of go from there. Just give me like 48 hours and I'll have it pegged. So
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Cool. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this extra long episode of War Stories. We will be back Friday after next. So next Friday, I think, Tony, you and I have a stream we're joining up on another channel, if I recall.
Yes. We're talking about Rambo toys on Go Figure.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, yep. And then tomorrow, or then the Friday after next Friday, we will be back on War Stories, and we will have a very different kind of film for you guys. So we'll see you then. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you soon.